Nigerian presidency this week gave it back to the Senate for yet again calling on President Buhari to change the current set of military commanders. According to the senators, their continued retention makes no military, strategic, or political sense, given that the troops have been suffering an increasing number of reverses for some time, despite the effort of certain administration officials to downplay the seriousness of the situation. In the past week, Boko Haram, which has been the poster boy of that terrorist onslaught, carried out yet another set of killings when it executed 5 aid workers they abducted in Borno State, northeast of Nigeria, at the end of last month. Of what interest is it to President Buhari to retain the services of these military commanders if the facts on ground do not support moving ahead with them? Joining us now to take another look at the situation is retired Col Hassan Stan-Labo, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Axon Partners Limited, a former military intelligence officer, an expert in security consultancy and defense strategy analysis. Colonel, good morning and welcome to the morning show. Thank you for joining us again. Good morning.
Thank you, Ruben. Thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us. Yes, I'm sure you listened to the introduction. In January, the House of Representatives recommended that the service chiefs should be replaced, that they had lived their welcome, overstayed their welcome. Then, of course, the other day, the Senate also arrived at the same resolution and said that the service chiefs should be relieved of their duties by the president. Many Nigerians also think that a change of personnel will probably result in a new approach to the fight against terror in the country. What do you think? Would the change of personnel make any difference? And is the president bound to take the advice of the National Assembly?
Well, thank you, Ruben, for inviting me to start with. First and foremost, we must all understand that the issue of hiring or firing of the service chiefs is entirely a prerogative of the president. They are his staff, and he has a final say over their tenureship. Fortunately or unfortunately, I would say there are no statutory pronouncements, so to speak, over their tenureship. So it is entirely at the president's will or wish. Having said that, I must add that the present crop of service chiefs have really served this country creditably. They came at a time when we were completely at a loss as to what to do. Their first 2 or 3 years in service, in office, I would say was a stabilizer that we needed. It was the stabilizing phase of the entire operation. I see them strictly as stabilizers who came in, stabilized the situation, and were able to allow our troops to reposition for better results. However, it is important we understand that every commander has his area of strength. And I see their area of strength actually tilting towards the stabilizing effect they brought to bear on the entire operations. Fine, they have moved this operation to a point where every Nigerian was proud once again to be a Nigerian. This point we got to was about 2 years or 3 years ago. As at that time, having achieved that, and the ovation was still very high, I expected that at that time we would have eased them off and brought in new hands, because now we were moving into a consolidating phase. If you are moving into the consolidating phase, you need a consolidator. What I expected the president to have done by then was to review the entire security, national security situation again in the country, okay? Come up with what I want to call a strategic higher commandant's intention. Strategic because he belongs to the strategic level. States clearly what he intends to achieve. That is by way of direction in which he wants the operation to move in. Come out with his job description for whoever will be coming in the next phase. Come out with his timelines. Spell out his, or identify his what's it called now? Oh my God. Targets. Whatever the case, come out with his timelines, apply or ensure that he puts in place necessary resources that will be able to address the next phase. Then go out there and shop for the right candidates that will come in and execute this. The 5 things I was talking about are that he should be able to spell out his job descriptions, place his timelines, identify, his milestones, come out with his KPIs, key performance indices, all right? And then, of course, avail resources. With that now, he shops for somebody, a consolidator that can now take the entire journey forward. Let's look back to military history. The Gulf War, for instance, it had the Desert Storm and it had Desert Shield. Each of these were commanded by different commanders, and they had their life cycles, operational life cycles, between each. Each of these operational life cycles were commanded by different commanders who got deployed for certain specific attributes which they have. Today we can count, when we look back to World War I and World War II and so on, we can begin to talk of some General Patton, General Stalin, and so on. They had certain attributes that brought them in at that time. The commander-in-chief should be able to sit down and reassess the situation and know that this is where we are. Can I have somebody with the attributes I need to execute this? Not all commanders, I must say this and let me add it, not all commanders are field officers. Some are staff. When we say staff, they be on the staff. All right? And that is why in advanced armies like the US, from the rank of colonel, they begin to separate field officers and staff officers. Those who are to be in the field move from the rank of lieutenant colonel straight into brigadier general. They skip the rank of colonel because colonel is a staff appointment. And so on. Fine, we have not gotten to that stage yet to begin to implement that. But the point is that we should be able to know what are the attributes of those that might be taken over from these guys. You begin to find or shop for the next man the day you appoint the first man. So that in case along the line anything happens and it turns out you even have to fire that man, you already have somebody that's taking over from him. This is what we should be doing. If we don't do this on time, the operation might see itself relapsing. When it is relapsing, it means that we are beginning to lose traction and momentum, like we are already seeing. There is a level to which we lose traction and momentum, and we see ourselves going back again to the stabilization phase, whereby we begin to need new crops of stabilizers again, because these ones have already spent 5 years. Some level of operational fatigue have set in. So, in a nutshell, to answer your question, I think it is only proper that we ease them out. But we must make sure we ease them out with a standing ovation. They have served us. Okay. I respect them.
And that brings me to my question, because I'm curious to know, why do you think the president hasn't taken this decision? I mean, when confronted with this question several times, the president had said it was not advisable to change competent and trustworthy, those were his words, hands in the middle of a war. Do you think the president is dealing with trust issues here? And what does it stand to lose should he ease out these service chiefs?
Well, I would say two things to that in response to you. One, the president is probably not taking to what the general feeling is in the public, because maybe he sees beyond what we see. He is the president. The buck stops on his table, and there are certain pieces of information that comes to his table that does not get to us. And besides, he is the man who probably feels impressed with their performance. And since the entire prerogative is with him, he plays his wish. Secondly, as a president, and in some series of my letters or in form of advice to the president before he came on board, just immediately after his swearing in, I said this, and that is the second point I'm bringing up. You must surround yourself with some key individuals outside government who can look you into the face and tell you the bitter truth. Not just your staff, who will be feeling, if I tell him this man might throw me away. There are some friends we have. I still have colleagues in the military today who, after some interviews, will tell me, Stan, I'm disappointed in you. You should have certain friends who can look you into the face and tell you some bitter truth, which ordinarily your ministers wouldn't tell you. Nobody working under you can tell you. Why? Because they have to protect their jobs anyway. Some of the things I say here, if I were to be in uniform or still in service, I will keep my mouth shut. Because, of course, the rules does not allow me to speak out. Thank God I have regained my freedom. So the point I'm making is that if he has such friends, then please, I want to appeal to those friends to look at Mr. President in the eyes and say, can we do this? Please, can we do this? And then they sit down as friends and analyze the situation.
Okay. We'll go for a quick break, but let me just set the tone for the question real quickly before we go for the break. Some people and analysts are already positing, various forms at which this should happen. Some will support you by saying, it's not the time to go, or maybe you should ease these very brave soldiers out and let them run in the background because they have an antecedent of what is going on in the theater command and the likes. I mean, would you subscribe to that? I think it was Dr. Ike Okechukwu that was saying, it should be gradual in its step and its role. But you will answer that when we come for this quick commercial break. Thank you. All right, thank you so much for joining us. Still there, Rise News Channel. Colonel, what I was saying invariably is the fact that a lot of people have been positing ways to be able to do this. In fact, somebody said yesterday, I think Dr. Ike Okechukwu said that they should be eased out gradually, but they should still be part of the core of the new service chiefs they'll bring in. They should be at the background, do some consulting work, and to be able to harmonize processes, because we still need them one way or the other. They understand the antecedents of the war. And a clear example, just like I was discussing in the studio, was the fact that Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai now was actually brought in from the battlefront. It was based on his report card on the battlefront that the President Muhammadu Buhari brought him in, to come and lead this because he saw his efforts. So you still need people like that one way or the other. But we're talking about the modalities of doing it now. Do you subscribe to that?
I agree totally with you, Rufai. I agree with you. As a matter of fact, when these guys were appointed right from the word go, even before they were sworn in one of my interviews, either here or with some other sister stations, I said it that whoever recommended these guys did the president a fantastic favor. I said these were just the sort of hands we were looking for. This was even before they were sworn in, I think a day or so. Look at the air chief. He's a fantastic guy. Look at Buratai. The level of physical development Buratai has brought even into the army. It makes the army want to hungry you to go back. When I step into some offices today, I say, thank God for a chief of staff of this nature. We must give it to them. These guys are good. They are sound. At the same time, we must also be able to say, all right, it's enough. Let them be eased off and we bring in new hands. I mean, after 5 years in a position, whatever you really have to offer, you've offered it. And we have seen it. They have performed fantastically. The last time I was with General Buratai, I kept hanging on to him like a child hanging on to a mother because I was so proud of him. We shall ease, if we are to ease them out, we must ease them out, like I say, with a standing ovation.
Well,
but it's just time for them to go.
Colonel, well, some other Nigerians may not be enthusiastic as you are about the performance of these service chiefs. But, okay, it's good to commend them for the efforts they have made so far. But one of the suggestions by the Senate is that if the president does not sack them, they themselves should take the moral high ground and resign. Is it standard practice for a service chief to say, well, thank you very much, Mr. President. I think that another person should continue from where we have been able to take the battle to. We'll need some clarification in that regard. And then you were talking about World War I, World War II, World War II, when we had very distinguished generals at the battlefront, and you tried to describe some attributes. Do we still have soldiers with such attributes in the Nigerian military, given what we see as bloody civilians, of soldiers running away from the battlefield, of major generals even criticizing the military, of the rank and file? 256 of them resigned the other day, saying that they have lost interest in serving.
Thank you, Dr. Abati. Let me start with your last question. Do we still have soldiers with such attributes and so on? Dr. Abati, I will tell you this. As officers, we all did trained together, or let me say in batches, what we call courses, and so on, and we know ourselves. Even when you get into the field, having left the training institution, you see other seniors and juniors coming behind you. As you all are in the field, you know who is who. We know the soldiers amongst us. All right? I can sit here, and if you give me a pen, sincerely, I can give you 4 names that I say, look, interview these guys for the office of the chief. Including my classmates, including my immediate seniors, and even one step behind. Sound good guys. And I know what I'm saying. Good attributes. Fire eaters, like we refer to them in our parlance. All right? Rugged. Some of them are even of the special forces species. Well exposed. Both operationally and intellectually. We have them. And one good blessing which the Nigerian army has come to, or the armed forces today has, is that besides the operational ruggedness of the men, when I mean the men now, I'm referring to both the officers and soldiers, it has become another intellectual think tank. The average officer today from the rank of major or lieutenant colonel and above has a master's degree. Most of the generals you have, a good number of them have PhDs in their pockets. You never could know until they come out of service. So the point I'm making is that besides the ruggedness operationally, these are intellectual chaps whom you can sit down and discuss this country's future with, economically and what have you. We have them, Dr. Ruben. We have them. People who go with your prefix, doctor. They are there. What was the first phase of the question?
I raised the question about the Senate saying if the president doesn't sack the service chiefs, they too should take the option of resignation.
That is very unmilitary. It is very, very unmilitary. I'm not saying that the option is not available, but it's not a tradition with the military to see a subordinate say, I resign. It is a slap on the face of the superior officer who appointed you. Okay? It's a slap. And that is the actual situation. I'm not saying that in extreme situations, one might not throw in the towel. I mean, we've seen it even in the U.S. Army and so on. In extreme situations, you might say, well, sir, I think I've got to go, and so on. But then, when such situations have not arisen, this has not gotten to that point. This has only gotten to a point where I think if any of the service chiefs feels so pressed, rather than resigning, you have a session with the commander-in-chief. Sir, please, I would want to take a chieftaincy title in my village. Could you please ease me out? I have served, I've gotten to a period in my life where I think I should now go and be with my people in the grassroots. And you both discuss. And when the president agrees, he can say, okay, it's all right. I'll ease you out.
Okay. And
so on. But not for you to just pick your pen and put in a resignation and throw it to the commander-in-chief. Who are you? You must be a civilian then. You are not a military man.
Colonel, 2 quick questions. Some would say, aren't we actually in unusual times? When last did you see dozens of soldiers resign from the Nigerian military, as we have seen those over 200 do? Isn't it a big deal and unusual for the Nigerian army? And secondly, in a rare exclusive interview with the Arise News channel, the Chief of Army Staff said those calling for their removal are not addressing the issues, and those are not the issues on ground. Do you agree with him? And what should be the issue, really?
Colonel, we have just about a minute to go.
Adeswa.
Yes.
We have just about a minute to go.
Adeswa, I agree that, look, we've got issues in the forward lines. Mm-hmm. I agree that there are disgruntled tones in the forward lines concerning welfare and some other issues. Fine, good. But I don't want laymen out there to completely misunderstand the pulling out of 3, 5, 6 men or thereabout to mean that completely in military service, it is voluntary to come in, it is voluntary to opt out. Having served some number of years, as we saw with the men, and they had reasons to leave, some on medical grounds and so on, they had to now put in stating their case. Now, a good number of them were not let out initially because of the operational situation. Now, this cumulative number has come together, and at this point, they were easing all of them out. Well, and so the figure was just high, and it created so much noise.
Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.